loss of blood from the baby.
That's right.
So whoever is going to look after that baby must be skilled, and it's every mother's responsibility to go through the different steps.
So what should they do now about the cord after it's been cut? How do they care for the cord in the ensuing days?
Yes, in the ensuing days, caring for the cord means you clean the cord and you also apply an antiseptic to the cord called chlorhexidine. It is recommended that that is all we should apply to the cord and try and make it as dry as possible. That means if you're wearing a nappy or disposable nappy, it must always be below the levels of the cord so that it doesn't become soggy, so that the whole process of, I'll call it like desiccation, so that it will get very dry and wouldn't be like a good medium for bacteria to settle in. So cord care is very important. And one thing we must advise is don't add any funny thing to the cord.
That's very funny.
Because there are quite a lot of ointments, that have been prepared, particularly, in our traditional way, which is not that people actually go out and put cow dung or things like that onto these ointments, but they could be a cross-contamination. And tetanus is still a problem in Nigeria.
Yes.
And they have found that tetanus in the baby, the way it gets into the baby is through poultices that are applied onto the cord or through infected blades or, that have gotten contaminated. So if you're going to use anything, it must be a clean, possibly even sterilized blade to cut the cord, and we should make sure we don't add any poultices, just add chlorhexidine.
And what sort of things, since you're talking about that, because I know babies, even though they're children,
yes,
they deal with infection very differently from even a 1 or a 2-year-old.
Yes.
So it's not the usual sign. So what sort of things do you watch out for in a baby that would be a clue that there's something wrong with the baby?
A baby that cries incessantly, that is always crying and really looking very distressed when they cry. I know there are simple things that make babies cry, but when the baby's crying is prolonged, and the baby's not settling down, the baby's not sleeping, the baby isn't having wet nappies, you must have at least 4 wet nappies every day. The baby may be warm, and I think though a thermometer may cost, 700, 1,000, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Yes.
Spend a little less on the ceremony and let's get this. Yes.
I like that. Spend less on the ceremony.
A little less on the ceremony.
Spend less on the ceremony and
and
more
let's
on taking
invest.
care of your baby.
So I think every mother should go to a health center or a chemist and get a thermometer. So if you're worried, you can measure your baby's temperature. Anything more than 36.4, should start getting you towards a health facility. Don't sit on these babies because babies change. A sign or a symptom of illness can start in the morning and by the evening the baby is dead.
Yes.
So any little symptom, the baby is crying continuously, the baby isn't feeding well, the baby's nappies are not dry, the baby has spots on his body or blood splashes, the baby has a swelling in the central part of the soft part of your skull. If your baby is having twitching movements, anything that gets a baby's vomiting, if the stool is excessively watery, normally, a baby who is breastfed would have runny stools,
yes,
but it's not the type that would seep out of the nappy. And the frequency, sometimes you can get it up to 8 times, but those 8 stools are contained within the nappy.
Yes.
If you're worried and you're having profuse diarrhea, or the baby is vomiting, or the baby's abdomen is swollen, you should start panicking and you should get to the doctors. And apart from these symptoms, the mothers have to be detectives themselves, because we're talking about things that they can complain about. They actually have to be a bit more of a detective with a baby than with an older child. Like if you see that the umbilical stump, if it's smelly, If you see it's a bit red, you must worry about that. You must be able to open the eyes and look for jaundice. Because many babies, because of all the events that happened when the baby was coming down the mother's canal, the face can be quite squashed and puffy, and their eyes are shut, and the parents aren't able to even detect that there's jaundice. So you must be proactive. That's why in those days when the care was mainly in the hands of the grandmothers, you would see the grandmothers during the bathing session. They almost do like an inspection of all the parts of the baby. I mean, some grandmothers overdid things where they stretched the limbs and, and sometimes would pull the limbs out, or or they would use hot water to ferment the umbilical stump, and that will create burns on the skin. So, I mean, some things were overdone, but even within our traditional culture, there is the awareness of the vulnerability. And I just want to advise every mother that has a baby. I normally give a prescription in my hospital. I said, sing 10 times a day. Because there's something called communicative musicability. It has been discovered that the more we communicate with our babies, the more the brain develops. Absolutely. And these children who are nurtured within this environment feel very comfortable, and they grow up to have accelerated milestones. They grow up not to be aggressive, because the emotional channels that has developed the ego of that baby and that child has been well entrenched through that process. So please, every mother with a newborn baby, I prescribe again, sing 10 times a day.
Let's talk a bit about breastfeeding and the importance of breastfeeding in the newborn.
I cannot emphasize it, enough. They say Nigerians are very religious people. And I think why is because they feel Nigerians believe there's an Almighty. When you're a scientist and you learn about breast milk, if you didn't believe before, you really will believe. Because breast milk has everything that is